The topic of nature or nurturer was a great one from this episode, and it definitely had me doing some self-reflecting. Let me know if it had you doing the same thing. But more importantly, let's dig into this episode. I can't lie. The moment this episode opened with Damon being dramatic, filming this whole nature or nurturer bit, something in me said, oh, this is going to be a good one. And baby, that something inside of me was right, because this episode was giving. So getting straight into it, I want to talk about JR first, because man, I was so upset with him this episode. Like, I just couldn't believe he was acting the way he was. But then again, JR has been throwing these little tantrums these past few episodes. So I guess I kind of did expect it. But then again, no, JR, I don't like it. So in this episode, we know that JR and Damon took their DNA test to see if they are brothers or not, because Lord knows this has been lingering over all of our heads since JR made the assumption. And Damon was anxious, asking about when they will receive their results and things of that nature, while JR was acting like Damon was doing too much and need to chill out and was just mad at the world. But eventually, it's revealed that they aren't brothers, which I figured because it was something they, as in the creators, writers, or whoever of the show, had been pushing the narrative of them possibly being brothers a little too hard. So when things like that happen, I feel like it's not what they want us to think it is. But regardless of the fact, they still brothers, just not blood brothers. But JR was acting like Damon was a damn demon this episode. I personally don't understand why he was trying to be so distant from Damon. Like, I know that he is having personal issues with his mom and dad. However, it didn't give him the right to be so cold to Damon, especially when he was the one that not only started the assumptions about Damon being his brother, but was the one pushing for a DNA test between the two of them. Now he's snappy with Damon because Damon wants to get to know them through a class project he had. Like, what type of mess is that? JR clearly needed to be on someone's therapy couch this episode, because the mess with his parents don't have him thinking clearly. He's moody and he's confused and wasn't channeling his emotions properly. Granted, I get people process things differently, but I don't think JR thought about how Damon has to be taking the situation they both are in. It was just pissing all over Damon and just harboring resentment feelings. But I love when Damon was getting back with JR and told him, if you didn't want a brother, you shouldn't have come looking for one. And I agree with him. But see, I knew that JR was going to start acting some way from the time he seen his dad and Damon bonding during their alumni game they had, which I thought he had got past, but clearly not. Now, also in this episode, we got a pop-up from the baseball team's old coach, who is the reason they are in the terrible predicament they are in now. But he is there only because he is a part of the HBCU fraternity that JR is in. And they are having their Founders Day weekend. So, of course, all the older guys are showing up. But JR is not vibing with him at all. As he shouldn't, because he really messed up everything good they had going on with the baseball team. But let me just say my hot take. I personally am not pressed about what he did, because those PWIs in D1 schools do it all the freaking time with their star athletes. So, I refuse to be upset about it. But too bad he got caught. Granted, I still don't like him. And it's sad that it affected the players and the program overall. But that's the risk you take. But anyways, even though JR didn't care to see or talk to Coach Shaw, he ended up loosening up to him because Coach Shaw played into the, oh, we are brothers, this fraternity is everything, and I'm here whenever you need me role. And JR fell into it, as he should, because I mean, at the end of the day, that's one part of being into Greek life, getting wisdom and help from the ones before you. And I can't lie, I loved how the show displayed how important fraternities are with the scene of Coach Shaw and JR, because all the things JR was bottling up inside, he was able to release it to Coach Shaw. Now granted, even though I said all that good stuff, I don't think Coach Shaw was the person to motivate JR, but he did. And when JR told him about all his problems and how he was missing baseball, Shaw told him to not worry about baseball because he wasn't that good of a player. Like, damn, coach. And then he followed it up by telling him to focus on other things that would sustain him and make him grow into the person he's meant to be. And baseball just wasn't that. Like, it was a cool activity and all, but he wasn't really going to go far with it. And hell, that sounded good to me, and it sure did sound good to JR. Well, I shouldn't say it sounded good, but in a way it made sense. But then when Shaw ran into Coach Marcus and was mocking him about losing JR as a player, I was like, oh, Shaw playing dirty out here. I should have known. But thank God JR have people around him that truly want the best for him, like his frat brothers. Because they ended up telling him that he should still try to get back on the team no matter what BS Shaw was talking about. Because even though he may not be the best, it's still an activity that he loves to do and it makes him happy. And that's just as important than making, it to the pros. And I totally agreed with the frat brothers. So moving on, I want to get into my girl Simone because she was getting tried this episode and I did not like it one bit, okay? In this episode, we are getting to see some more of Simone in action when it comes to tennis, which I have to say, I totally forgot she plays tennis because we haven't really seen much of her in that space. Or maybe the last episode just made me forget. But anyways, she finds out for one of her first games or her first matches, she has to play the number 2 player in the conference. And I'm just like, come on now, she can't win for losing, my God. I swear, when it comes to her tennis life, she gets hit so hard with so many crazy ties. But some way, somehow, my girl always pulled through. And if she doesn't, she gives a good performance, try to. But in this episode, that wasn't the case. Because the girl who she was playing was taunting her and she was getting heckled by some of the other girls on another team. And she couldn't take it and she started spazzing out and ended up getting a penalty for it. It was a lie. And I'm just over here like, whoa, Simone. Just ask yourself, what would Serena and Venus do? Because baby, how you acted wasn't it. And even I know they're supposed to be composure on the court. Hell, you could have cussed them out after the game. But once she started panicking and losing focus, she completely lost it and lost the game. And it was just a bad look for her. Now, of course, Phil was watching and she was rooting for Simone in her, Phil-like way. But when she seen her flip out on the court, Phil had to give her a little pep talk, which I love because I understand that Simone gets on Phil's nerves sometimes, as she always do. But there are times when Phil comes through for her, even though Phil waits for the freaking last minute. Like, dang, Phil, you could have told her all this stuff before her game started. But it's no biggie as long as it gets said. And Simone needs all the wisdom she can get because I think sometimes she forgets that she's only in her first year of college. Or maybe it's just me that forgets. Needless to say, she still has a long way to go and much to learn, and Phil can definitely be a key factor in that. So moving on from Simone, I want to get into Keisha this episode because it was a sad and emotional week for her. With that being said, I have to first say it's so funny how Keisha was giving Cam the googly eyes when he wasn't speaking to her because she was the one who decided to ghost him. But she out here giving these little puppy dog eyes knowing it was all her fault. They weren't talking. But of course, eventually they get back, on good terms. But beyond that, Keisha was sad this episode because her mom's birthday was coming up. So of course, a lot of emotions were coming up. And the worst part about it was she thought she was going to go through those hurt emotions alone, being that her father, the one person that understands her pain, was being an ass to her because of her decision to drop pre-med as a major for dancing. But he eventually got his act together. But even if he didn't, we all know that Simone was not going to let her milk in sadness alone because literally it's in Simone's bones to do things for her friends. Which is a good thing, of course, because, that's her way of showing that she cares. Side note, I knew Keisha was mixed with something, but I couldn't quite put my finger on it. But in this episode, it was revealed she was Filipino. It probably been revealed, but for some reason, I found out this episode. But getting back on track, Nate and Simone threw a Filipino birthday party for Keisha's mom and embraced their culture, which I love. What I also love, and this is so random, but I love when Simone and Nate was talking about surprising Keisha with the last minute party. Nate brought up how he's the medium-sized box braids in under 3 hours, so there isn't much he cannot do. When I say I screamed at that line, because every black girl knows it takes forever to do some box braids, especially by yourself as one person. So by her saying that, it's like she's saying she's Superwoman for black women and black women hair, because baby, you know, that's a miracle work, because that's a lot of work, especially if you just one person. But overall, I was happy that they were able to make Keisha and her dad happy, who, by the way, her dad pissed me off this episode, but that's nothing new. So in this episode, Amara was getting ready for a Black Woman in Journalism Summit, which I love, being that I was a journalism student in school, and I know how important and beneficial these type of events are, because, baby, no matter what people say or what you see, there is still a battle for Black women in journalism, especially if you're on screen. But that's a topic for another day. Now, while setting up, Coach Marcus wanted to help her set up, but Amara didn't want him to, being that she really isn't fond of him at the moment. But he wants to be her friend so bad. Like, sir, leave that lady alone. So Amara told him that they never been anything as simple as friends. And baby, that was a bar, okay? But I really don't think Marcus is taking into account how bad he really hurt her. Yeah, it was a long time ago, but she is allowed to process it how she wants, especially since he is trying to get back with her. But beyond Coach Marcus killing her vibe, so does he. Being that he is the president of the school, he is the one that basically has to blackball her from doing things on campus, or at least in certain places on campus, which he did in this episode with her slumming. And to be honest, I hated that he did what he did, because at this point, it is now affecting the things she is trying to do to better the students in their field. Just because the board of trustees at the school has a personal vendetta towards her for being a respected and professional journalist. But, you know, she was airing out their dirty laundry, so I mean, I see it why they got the vendetta. But now the students are getting the short end of the stick. That's just so disgusting, and it goes to show you how people do things for themselves and not for the betterment of people around them. Especially people in power, like, you messing up what the students got going on. But anyways, to wrap up my recap, I want to talk about how I love what Damon was doing this episode with his nurturer versus nature school project, which he involved all the characters, and we kind of got more depth from all of them with the topic, like finding out that Kim comes from a background of singers. And now that we know that, we are probably about to get a few more notes from him. Lord Jesus, all I know is I'm gonna be so tickled hearing him sing, because I still can't get over that dancing episode with him and Keisha. But that's neither here nor there. But we also found out that Thea is trying to find her identity outside of tennis, because her trying to be the best has also hindered her in having a personality. So we definitely learned a lot from everyone, and I love the realism that came from the topic. And more importantly, I like that the topic was able to get Damon to realize that whether he found out who his real parents are or not, he is still great, and the people in his life and his skills set is all that matter. At least that's what I got from, what he was saying this episode. But that is all I have to say for my recap for this episode. I hope you all enjoyed it, and if you have thoughts, you already know what to do. Like this video and show your girl some love. Comment your thoughts, and let's discuss what you thought of this episode and where we think things are heading. And last but certainly not least, subscribe and join the Queen. Bye.